Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone who's joining us here at Tech Law Fest today. Welcome to the penultimate main stage panel and the innovation dialogue for the Tech Law Fest 2021 this year. It is a pleasure to be here and a greater pleasure to have all of you join us. Now, my name is Josh, and I'm the chairperson of the Asia Pacific Legal Innovation and Technology Association. And this is my third time at Tech Law Fest. And Tech Law Fest brings great memories. Since 2018, it's seen great collaboration between public sector players as well as private sector players to come together to push the boundaries and thought leadership in relation to the technology of law and the law of technology. And this is, a great way to segue into the topic that we will be discussing today, which is we're looking at transforming the private and public paradigm to drive legal innovation. This is a very timely and very exciting and interesting topic because it shows how private and public sector players can come together to push the innovation agenda for the legal industry. But before I go too deep into the topic, let me first share the limelight and introduce the speakers that we have today. We have speakers from literally four corners of the globe. We have people from Singapore, from Australia, from the United Kingdom, and I myself am calling in from California, United States. In fact, this is the furthest I've ever been from any panel, so this is a great test of my my moderation skills. So there are any shortcomings at all with this panel, please, the blame lies with me. But without further ado, I wanted to take this chance to just introduce the panel and let the panelists introduce themselves. So we'll go in alphabetical order. So first and foremost, we have April. April, if you'd like to go forward and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. My name is April Brousseau, and I'm the Director of Research and Development at Clifford Chance. I've been with Clifford Chance for about a year, and my background is as a lawyer, a librarian, knowledge management, information architect, product manager. I clearly have a short attention span, but it's turned out to be quite helpful in my career, and I'm really looking forward to discussing the success of public-private partnerships today with this esteemed panel.
Thank you so much, April. And next up, we have Christina. Christina, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Josh. It's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Christina Blacklaws. I'm a former president of the Law Society of England and Wales and a lifelong innovator. So I now help businesses to get themselves fit for the future. I chair the two UK government bodies in the technology and law space, and I am the head of faculty of the Legal Technology and Innovation Institute. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. And next we have Evan. Evan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So hey everyone, it's Evan here from Checkbox. Like Josh, this is my third Tech Law Fest as well, and this event holds a very special place in my heart. So I'm very glad to be back. My background is I came out of law school, started a business called Checkbox, legal automation, and since then I've been able to work with all sorts of different legal teams, from law firms to government to not-for-profit, universities, corporate legal teams, all around the world, also all four corners. So hopefully I'll be able to shed some pretty good insights today, given this experience I've had.
I'm sure you will, Evan. You always do. Thank you so much for the introduction. And last but not least, we have Xing Xuan. Xing Xuan, would you like to step forward and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Josh, and really good afternoon or morning, evening, wherever you're calling from. My name is Xing Xuan from the Singapore Ministry of Law. It's a pleasure to be here. Like Evan, like Josh, this is my third time at Tech Law Fest, but the last two times it's always been in the background as part of the organizing folks. And this is the first time that we are joining everyone here to take part in this discussion. Just to share a little bit more about what I do, my team in Mendor, we drive industry development initiatives with a strong focus on technology. So we look at promoting technology adoption, supporting technology development, and also catalyzing innovative activities. So today's topic really is very close to my heart, and I look forward to having a good discussion with everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Xing Chuan, and we can't wait to hear your insights as well. So I think this is a great way to segue into the topic, and that's about, basically transforming the private-public paradigm to push the legal innovation agenda. Now, this seems to be a rather obvious issue at first, right? Shouldn't the public and private sector be working together to jointly push legal innovation and technology? Given that both sectors have an interest in the transformation of the legal industry and providing society with better quality legal services and access to justice. But interestingly, I do have an observation, and perhaps you could say a hypothesis as well, that public-private collaboration has not been a strong feature of legal innovation. And I say this because in 2019 and 2020, ALITA, the Asia Pacific Legal Innovation and Technology Association, did 3 State of Legal Innovation surveys of the Asia Pacific. And what we found was that in jurisdictions across this region, legal industry players tend to go their own and focus on the stakeholders that they want to impact, right? Either it being specific clients or underserved litigants and so on. Now, that is not to say that there are no jurisdictions engaging in cross-silo collaboration. For example, in Singapore, we've seen the government work with private legal tech companies to provide several co-funding models for law firms to increase their adoption of legal technology. I don't want to steal Xing Chuan's thunder, so I'm sure she will introduce that later on. But we've also seen a lot of collaboration behind the scenes in the rolling out of industry-wide projects such as LawNet in the past. In the UK, one prime example of cross-sector collaboration is that of the LawTech UK panel, which collaborates to accelerate the digital transformation of the legal sector for the benefit of society. And the result of this collaboration is LawTech UK, which seeks to provide a sandbox for innovative R&D and increase the awareness and understanding of law tech and fostering transformative innovation for the legal sector in the United Kingdom. Now, these green shoots of cross-stakeholder collaboration, however, are usually the exception rather than the norm. So what this panel therefore hopes to be able to tease out is why such partnerships are first, important, second, what are the pain points, and third, what are the areas of improvement that can be worked on. And when diving into these areas, I think it's important to just put it out there that we may need to go past what seem to be roadblocks just on the surface and explore whether there are deeper underlying reservations or fissures between different stakeholders in the legal industry. And rather than papering over them, we can go into these issues to encourage sustainable collaboration. After all, the collaboration that we want to see is not the kind where we just put lawyers and policymakers and civil society in the same group, but to actually create deep trust and ties of collaboration. And so with that, let us dive into the first discussion theme. Now, the first point that I hope we can cover is about highlighting the potential benefits from public-private partnerships. Why does legal innovation lend itself well to public and private collaboration? And here, I'd like to first call upon Christina and afterwards Evan to provide some examples, right, to highlight why and how private-public partnerships can promote legal innovation. So Christina, if you'd like to kick us off, over to you.
Well, thank you, Josh. And I think there has been a growing understanding in the UK that the legal services sector underpins both society and our economy. So the legal sector needs to keep up, it needs to reinvent, it needs to lead. And digital innovation is absolutely key to that and offers huge opportunities. So out of that has been born a couple of government bodies that you've already mentioned. One, I'm going to talk about them both as I actually chair both of them. So the first one I was going to talk about was Next Generation Services, which is supported by the UK government. And that body is actually responsible for putting a huge amount of money, UK taxpayers' money, into collaborative research and development across a whole range of legal tech activities. And the second you've already talked about, LawTech UK. So it is our role to provide the leadership in a cross-sector way to provide guidance and tools. So for example, we have a lot of training on our website. We've also prepared a legal statement on crypto assets and smart contracts to provide really targeted work programs. So we have a program around legal schema. We have a program around access to data. We have, as you already referenced, and I'll talk about later if I might, our sandbox, which brings together not only the law techs and those involved in either in-house or in private practice, but also government, regulators, and everybody else who is involved in the supply of legal services. So if I may, I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Thank you.
Of course, Christina. And Evan, would you like to add to that perspective from where you are?
Absolutely. So answering the question again of like why public and private collaboration really lends itself to legal innovation, I actually think it's really important because when you think about the role of government, it's about furthering community, sustainability, economic health, adding value to the industry. And a lot of that comes through innovation, right? But government also has the invisible hand that kind of creates the guide rails, the encouragement throughout the industries to actually go and implement a lot of the policies that are effectively set. But the tricky thing is that, whilst you can set policy, how do you actually operationalize it? And, from a lot of the experience that I've seen, true operationalization happens at the private level. So you almost need this partnership between setting the policies at the government level, at the public level, and then you've got the private companies who are all coming in to, take note on what that guidance is and actually make it happen, and make it happen on the ground level at scale where you're closer to the consumers, closer to the actual users, and closer to the community. And I think one thing that's really interesting to me as well is you can talk about innovation at sort of the public level, but the most widespread innovation is typically driven through commercialization, right? If you're able to tie innovation with some sort of commercial profit benefit, then these private companies can really go and further that agenda. And I want to use a specific example, like a case, like almost like a use case, and then I'll talk about some real examples as well. But if I share like a very globally sort of appreciated use case, it would be around notifiable data breach or privacy breaches. And in Singapore, we call this the PDPA, right? The Personal Data Protection Act. And we have, in the UK, the GDPR, and every jurisdiction around the world has this. When you think about it, the government has obviously a duty to protect, around privacy breaches and things like that. But how do you actually operationalize that, on the ground level? You can imagine you can, have, say, law firms as an example, right? We've seen this before. Law firms take the legislation, productize it, make it available in a way that allows people to actually understand the types of policies that have been set by government, especially when they're new and complex. And that kind of partnership really drives that legal innovation, right? The private law firms creating new technology to further government policy. I want to do quick shout outs as well to some other examples that I've seen, particularly in the Singapore market. I think Singapore's doing a great job at this. It'd be remiss for me not to mention Legal Khaki, who gave us a shout out in an earlier session that they were speaking at. That was a very good example of how the state courts had a problem around migrant workers not having the best access to language and best understanding of employment laws. And are often subjected to, unfair dismissal and types of issues like that. There was a project that was quite inspiring last year where Singapore Management University students, there was a girl called Shakrina who was speaking earlier today. She worked on the Checkbox platform, a technology to partner with, state courts and SAL, Singapore Academy of Law, to be able to produce a product that effectively, pushed the envelope on how access to justice was delivered for vulnerable citizens. So, I can rattle off so many different other examples, like LawSoc as an example. If you jump on their website now, you'll see they have a Gov Assistance tool. The fact that these sort of statutory bodies are actually using technologies themselves, partnering with private companies like Volatus, who's helping building out these applications for them. I mean, there's just so many examples of. I'll stop there. But I really do believe it is such a powerful marriage of two different groups with very similar interests.
Thanks so much, Evan, and as well as Christina. I think those were great points that you shared. In particular, I think it is great, right, to look at the experiences and the examples that you've shared in the UK as well as in Singapore. And now let's turn that, right, to look at what April and Xing Juan might have to share, because they are in this, in these areas. And what I would like April as well as Xing Juan, and hopefully if time permits, Evan as well to speak on, is to look at some of the pain points and potholes, right, that you've seen in building successful partnerships. But going beyond just sharing what the pain points and potholes are, using the examples that I'm sure you'll be bringing to the table, how were these roadblocks eventually addressed, and how were they mitigated? So with that, over to you, April, if you'd like to start the ball rolling.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I think getting started is actually one of the hardest things to do with a public-private partnership. It's finding sort of the like-minded individuals, not just institutions, but you need to have those sponsors within both sides of the partnership in order to actually drive real change. So the challenge is really just figuring it out. Where does the string start and where does it end? And to the point of where does it end, the other challenge is often sort of meeting expectations. So it's defining what does success look like for you and for me in order for this to actually be a really successful partnership. And I think, and I mean, Xin Juan will speak to this as well. I think one of the ways that we've found to overcome that is a really open dialogue and just really, really being clear with ourselves and being patient with ourselves to really figure out, what is the best thing for both parties, but also for the wider ecosystem, which is one of, the things that I, to the earlier point about what is great about public-private partnerships, what is the value it delivers. It doesn't just benefit the two, institutions involved in the partnership. It actually really benefits the wider ecosystem, which helps everybody move forward in the industry. So I don't want to take up too much time talking about the challenges that I face, but I think, one other related to the delivery and sort of meeting expectations, it's sometimes a challenge to really define the success in terms of how do you get there. So I think planning is really important and being really clear about what milestones you're attempting to achieve and when. And I think, project management and reporting and communication is just so, so important to making sure that these things are a success, because otherwise you can end up, and we have fortunately not ended up, but you can end up spinning your tail for a really long time. And so I think really clearly defining what the expectations are and how you're going to get there and sticking to those plans can really, really help. Also making sure that you have the right people in the room, not just the sponsors, but the right expertise. So if you have the wrong people in the room talking about deliverables that they don't really understand, you're also not going to get very far. So it's connecting the right people and the right minds at the same time.
Thanks so much, April. I just wanted to draw out 2 points there, right? The first point is what you said about open dialogue, which means that it is important to be open-minded going into the conversation. But I think what you're also saying is that beyond that, there needs to be a certain sense of transparency in terms of the sharing of information. So more importantly, we build that base layer of trust going into these kinds of conversations. And I think the second point that you mentioned is about getting the right people in the room, right? And I think that is something that, at least from my experience, when I was in Singapore and working in these areas last time, I also realized that getting the right people into the room is essential. And Xing Juan, I'm wondering whether from your perspective, you will be able to share more about this particular area. Xing Juan, over to you.
Sure. Of course. I definitely agree with you when, as well as April, when we talk about having the right people in the room, having that clarity, that common vision. I think one of the things that we really see in terms of a roadblock when we are trying to kickstart initiatives with the private sector really is that common goal. Do we have a common vision? Are we aligned in what we're trying to achieve? And I think this is where we usually stumble a little bit at the beginning, because that even though we might broadly say, so for example, legal technology, using that, digitalizing the legal sector. It is a broad common vision. It is a broad goal that everybody will agree to. But because the impetus is quite different from government's perspective, what we're trying to do is to get more law firms, legal departments to adopt technology, because that increases productivity, and that translates to better and quality, as well as hopefully more cost efficient as well services for businesses and for citizens. But if you are looking at it from the viewpoint of a private sector, of course, you have different considerations. You have your top line, you have your bottom line that you need to consider. You do want to try and make sure that your product is as customized to, say, the Singapore market as much as possible, but there is cost involved. You do want to bring the price point down so that you have more adoption, which is what the government wants as well. But of course, you do have to think about your own commercial viability as well. So, I mean, I think it is always, we try to be transparent, but at the same time, because we are approaching it from different perspectives, it is always a little bit difficult and a little bit challenging at the beginning to align that. Of course, the other thing is really around what April mentioned in terms of dialogue. It is that communication, it is that engagement that we need to have in order for us to then say, yes, we are starting from different positions and perspectives, but there is a way for us to align. And if I take a couple of examples, previously when we did the technology and innovation roadmap, we did this, we launched this last year, October 2020, but this was really a year-long effort. We had more than 90 stakeholders coming in together with us to arrive at a common vision. And you can imagine the first session where you had many people, as many diversity, and of course, there are different opinions. Directionally, we might all be going in the same direction, but if you think about the post-it notes and all of that, we had 20, 30 different kinds of opinions there, and the alignment took a lot of time. So I think in terms of the clarity of vision, as well as then that dialogue and the engagement, constant engagement for us to be able to unpack everything and arrive at that same understanding would be, I think, one of the roadblocks, but really not insurmountable. It is doable. It just takes a lot of effort. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sing Chuan. And I get reminded of a quote that I hear, right? Not in relation to legal technology specifically, but actually in terms of another area of technology. But it was the late President Kennedy in the United States, right? He said, we do this not because it is easy, but because it is hard, right? And I think I was also at that consensus building, that ideation stage for the innovation roadmap back in Singapore. And I remember the post-it notes very vividly pasted all over the glass windows. And at the end of the day, when the moderators were closing the session, I could see that look in their face in terms of, wow, how are we going to put that all together? But I think, eventually a great job was done. So kudos to the Ministry of Law and all of the team as well behind that for being able to coalesce together into something that's a clear roadmap for the industry going forward. Now, I want to take this chance to see whether Evan has any thoughts in particular on this area as well, based on what April and Sing Chuan has shared, or if there are any other observations that you have. Evan, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would first agree with Sing Chuan. I think when for any successful partnership, you need to think about each party's interests and then align them, right? So really, what are each party's interests? Have we considered each other's interests, not just our own, but the other side, build empathy, right? And on that note, I think it is very important. And again, I've seen it firsthand done really well in Singapore and heard a lot of great things about UK as well. I know that we have a global audience here. I definitely do challenge the public sector professionals to understand that it very much has to be government-led, I think, right? Like the private sector can push, but at the end of the day, it's very much driven from the government. And I've seen initiatives before where you have, say, governments putting out tenders and opportunities where they are mandating a partnership between technology and private coming together to solve a public problem. And that works really well, because I think a lot of and going back to the question, which is really, what is the roadblocks or the pain points? I think one of them is often when you work with private and public and technology, and we're talking about legal innovation here, there's a sense of immaturity that can sometimes be associated with high risk that the government doesn't really want to touch. But as soon as you partner with private, private, again, have their ears close to the ground, they're working closer with technology, and it almost creates a bit of a vetting, like a quality assurance funnel for you, right? Like if you had a tender with a very reputable, telecommunications company or a big law firm bringing in a technology, as government, it's almost killing two birds with one stone, because you're driving innovation, but you're also leveraging private to help you bring what is already, sort of qualified technology that you may not be able to do yourself because of just different spheres of work. So I think there's huge rooms for collaboration and actually a 1 + 1 = 3 effect that maybe we're not thinking sometimes as creatively about, but I definitely think there's an ability there. And I'll add on one last thing. There's another challenge that's quite different from that around alignment, which is speed. I think private tends to move faster than public, and that causes a friction. And again, that can be tied to many things, from higher security stances. We need technology to be on-prem. We need to go through tender processes. Like there's a lot there that can really deter private to come to public. And I think there's so many programs, again, driven by the public sector that can move this forward. I think Christina mentioned like a sandbox in the UK. I know in Singapore, like IMDA has like a accreditation system. I know like MinLaw and LawSoc have Techcelerate for Law. Like there's so many programs and grants you can wrap around the industry to really further this. So I really challenge all the government who's listening on this call to really push the agenda on this.
Thank you so much, Evan. And I fully agree with the quote that you mentioned, which is 1 + 1 = 3. Notwithstanding that, I think people will continue to say that I, as a lawyer, don't know how to do math, but I think absolutely, realistically on the ground, right, that is an equation that certainly does come about because it's greater than the sum of its parts, right? And the other point that you mentioned is that I thought was interesting, was about how you mentioned that the government should be the one that takes the leadership position and takes the onus, right, the impetus to drive things forward. So that is what we see perhaps in from your experience. And I wanted to pass the time over to Christina to see whether over in the UK, given the hat that you previously wore in the Law Society, was that also something that you would as a parallel over there as well? Christina, over to you.
Yeah, so I think April mentioned ecosystem, and I think that's a really great way to think about our industry, that there are a whole range of players, and it is so important to get the right people in the room at the right time. And we've done a lot of research at the Law Society and our regulator as well about what are the blockers to innovation and the proper use of technology within legal services. And I'm afraid one of the key blockers is the end users. It's very rare that the technology doesn't work. It's often that it is not adopted in a way that works within legal practice. So I think it's really important that we have the opportunity to bridge the gap between the theory and the practice. And the Legal Technology and Innovation Institute that I'm head of faculty for, and which partners with big tech such as Microsoft and Thomson Reuters, as well as real small startups and great organizations like Alita, bar associations, law societies, and academic institutions, is provides one way to do that. But to pick up your point about who needs to be in the room, when at LawTech UK, when we set up the sandbox, we're now moving into our second cohort, kicks off in October for our sandbox. We did a lot of research to understand what tech startups need. And what they told us they needed was great networking, so access to the people who might be buying their products, great insight, so that depth of expertise from lawyers, but things that we didn't previously think about, which is actually understanding of investment, access to regulators, and access to data. Those were the sort of key things to pick up Evan's point about scale up. You know, they could not really test and scale their products without that. So that's how we built the Law Tech Sandbox, and we've prepared some reports on this if people are interested to understand, you know, what happened in those sandbox. But we had some great case studies there. So, for example, Vodafone, which is a very large telecommunications business, partnered with a very small law tech startup called Amplify, and they supported Amplify, and we supported them through a whole range of workshops to test the ethics of their proposition, which was to use machine learning and NLP to form terms and conditions in a way that people could understand. So people at different sort of levels of sophistication and cognitive ability to be able to understand. So lots of really challenging issues there, but Vodafone, I think, learned and understood as much as Amplify did through that process. And another example was the partnership of Norton Rose Fulbright with Clause to look at legal schema. So legal schema is about open sourcing and universalizing vocabulary for embedding and structuring data and legal documents. And again, through workshops, through collaborations, through getting the regulators and the ethicists and others involved, we were able to produce a white paper, and that's going to be a whole program of activity for us moving forward. And again, Norton Rose Fulbright got some fantastic insights, were able to engage their employees with it, got some great PR, to be honest. And so it can really be a win-win-win, a win for the businesses, a win for the organizations, and indeed a win for society.
Thank you so much, Christina. And I think I can only echo those points that you just raised, which are really insightful. Kind of like building blocks, right, as to the final discussion theme that I want to quickly just turn to now in light of the time that we have. But I just want to look at, you know, whether from the suggestions that have been drawn out by the panelists so far, whether we can see, you know, there are some best practices in making public-private partnerships work for legal innovation. So I think each of the panelists just now, you raised about some of the ways in which you overcame, you know, some of the stumbling blocks and the pain points. Would the panel be interested in coalescing into some of these examples into best practices that the audience can take away, you know, for us? So maybe what I'll do is to just turn quickly to Christina first to help start off that coalescing process, and then I'll turn to April and Xingjuan to share their thoughts. Christina, over to you.
So for me, it is about how we see the world. And I think that we need to see it as collaborative and with opportunity for us all in our ecosystem to work together. As my colleague Jennifer Swallow often says, she's the director of Law Tech at Tech Nation. She always says that the rising tide raises all boats. And I think that is something for us to hold on to, as we are all pioneers. We are all wanting, as Xingjuan said, you know, we want to get to the same place. And we need to hold to that and keep that integrity as our guide. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Christina. So maybe I'll turn over to April and then Xingjuan. April?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I really love that quote from Jennifer. There's been so many quotes today that I'm totally going to steal. But I think, again, we all are going towards the same direction. But I think in terms of best practice, it is really critical to acknowledge the differences in objectives. So the viability of potential deliverables for a public institution versus a private one will be different. And we need to acknowledge that we don't always have the same ability to get to that place in the same way, and not try to ignore that fact and get around it. It's one of those things, you can't go under it, you can't go over it, you just have to go through it. So, but if you don't call it out and you don't work together to solve the problem, then you will get stuck. So I do think just being open and honest, coming back to that, and patience. I think Evan said we do move at different paces, and it's important to acknowledge that and the reasons why, and to just be patient.
Thanks so much, April. So I think, you're going to take away some quotes. Please don't take away 1 + 1 = 3, because I'm going to take that one. So let's look at Singapore now. Xing Juan, over to you.
Right. I think if I were to just also, adopt some of what the other panel speakers have also mentioned, I think what I would consider as a best practice really is to work with, to leverage the ecosystem. We do have a very good large base, diverse players within the ecosystem that we can work with and really lead that synergies. So if I use an example, what we are currently working on, the Legal Technology Platform Initiative, we are working with a private sector player, so Lupo as our technology partner. But it doesn't just stop there. We are working with PMS players, DMS players, working with SAL, with courts, with other agencies, of course lawyers. We've been engaging them for almost a year now on many different occasions, focus group sessions, surveys, and different modalities. But I think the main point really is that there is a lot of, I would say, insights, a lot of knowledge, a lot of advice that everybody can help with, bring to the table to make a public and a private sector collaboration work. The other thing really also is, as we do this, and coming from the public sector, is to try and look at it from a more flexible, agile approach. When we were looking and approaching this particular initiative, of course, there was a question of why don't we just do it ourselves? Then you can control everything, you can then have it the way you want. But a longer term perspectives around then, how do you make sure that it is sustainable, not just on a commercial basis, but also from a technology perspective? How do you make sure that the features, the solutions on the platform will always be something that the lawyers, the legal departments want? And that's the part where we started pivoting away from the traditional way of, government, you do it yourself, but to look at many different modalities, working with partners, private sector partners, but at the same time also making sure that some of the things that lawyers are still very much focusing on, so security, of course, data, privacy, access, all of that is still, I would say, safeguarded. So I think Evan made a good point about speed. Of course, the pace at which we work and private sector will be a little bit different. But we, I think, have managed to find a happy equilibrium. We move a little faster. The private sector players give us a little bit more patience. But I think it has worked well because there is that constant dialogue and understanding about how we should work together and we are trying to achieve.
Thank you so much, Xing Juan. I think that's really, really useful insights. And it's a nice segue, I think, to the audience questions, right? And I see some of them coming in, which is great. So one of the questions that I do see here is, how have the learnings, if any, from initiatives like Accelerate or, TechStart for Law, that's the precursor to that, help to shape current approaches to public-private partnerships? So I guess there's no better person to ask that than to Xing Juan. So Xing Juan, over to you.
All right, thank you. Yes, so TechStart for Law, Accelerate in the past 2017-2019 was very much funding schemes But of course, as part of that was us working together with Law Society and even other government agencies about curating some of the solutions so that it is easier for the law firms. They aren't faced with a whole myriad of solutions out there and getting some of that decision paralysis there. But we found as well that it wasn't, I would say, not necessarily a silver bullet. So there were still gaps. So we, after rolling out funding programs, and we did reviews, we did interviews, and we also spoke at length with the Law Society, and we realized that there were also other gaps that we needed to address. So, for example, for the small law firms, sole props and small law firms, it wasn't also easy for them as they continued to adopt a few different kinds of technology for these technologies to kind of like talk to each other. So there was still quite a bit of manual work involved in then how do I copy, paste, and do all of these data entry across the various solutions. Of course, they don't necessarily have the IT resources, expertise to do a lot of this work. And we realized that then there needs to be a shift in how we approach things. Of course, things like funding continues, but there needs to be a different way of approaching the promotion as well as digitalization for the sector, which is why then now we are looking at directly providing the legal technology platform.
Thanks so much, Xing Xuan. And I think I want to turn quickly to just one more question before we close this session. And it ties into one of the points that was made earlier, which is about tying innovation to profit motive. So I wanted to ask, right, because the question basically that we have here is, in any public-private partnerships, the private party is unlikely to enter into such an arrangement unless it is commercially suitable for them. So how can public-private partnership models be structured in such a way to tap on this commercial incentive to work together, in this private-public partnership? So would any of the panelists like to take up the baton and answer this question?
In the UK, I think there's a real acknowledgement that it is incredibly important for the good of the economy that business is able to flourish, and particularly new and innovative and digital and technological businesses. So it is, in that sense, it's in all our best interests to support the development of the nascent law tech industry, and that is something that I think is a key driver to the investment in innovation in legal technology in the UK.
Thanks so much, Christina. And
just add one point. Sorry,
yes,
I was going to say,
I
think it's also important to acknowledge that it's the private has a role to play in contributing. We have to invest as well, and it's important for us in the ecosystem to not rely exclusively in these kinds of partnerships on funding from the public sector, that we are also investing not just expertise, but true investment. This is the 1 + 1 = 3. We're only going to get to 3 if we're all, contributing to that.
April, you stole my quote, but I guess I have to give it to you. But I think, this is a nice way to kind of just close the panel, and just to see, whether our 4 panelists here, the way they like to do it is to ask them whether there was any particular insight that they took away from a fellow speaker. So once again, we'll go through in alphabetical order. Let's keep it short, and then we'll close the session. So April, you stole my quote, so you have to choose another one, starting with you.
Well, there's quite a few quotes. I'm going to steal Jennifer's quote for sure. But I think a comment that Evan made earlier really resonated with me about the role of private in terms of operationalizing. And it's not, I hadn't considered it that way, and that really resonated with me. And it's something that I'm going to take away, and I appreciate that, Evan.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. And so next in line would be Christina. Over to you.
Great contributions from everyone. So it's difficult to pick on one thing, but as I'm so involved with government, what really resonated was the speed thing that Evan raised. So it is something that, it is a challenge, and it's good to face into these challenges. So I'm going to take that one away. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. And Evan, over to you.
I'm going to take one from Christina. I think often we don't think enough about the adoption of the end users. We can all get around the top and then it ends up failing because we didn't think about the adoption. So that's definitely one to think about. And actually, I've seen it done really well at SMU Pro Bono Clinic. They've been doing a lot of testing as they go through the legal automation process. And I think bringing the end users closer to the beginning of the process and along the journey is definitely something I've taken away from Christina.
Thank you, Evan. And last but not least, Xingquan, over to you.
Thanks, Josh. I think what I will take away the most really is from April about her point where frequently it is the most difficult just to get started. Really, a lot of times, even for government, what we need to do is to come in really and kickstart that flywheel. And then after that, you have the ecosystem and the community to come up and they will start building upon that virtual cycle. But it is frequently the most difficult just to get everyone together, align them, and get things started.
Thanks so much, Xingquan. And I think, thank you also to all the panelists for sharing your takeaways from this session. Right here, I actually see a great example already of private-public cross-collaboration and innovation coming forward. So I think this is a great example and it gives us a great platform to build on. And I hope to see greater legal innovation and technology and transformation ideas and projects from all of the panelists here, which I'm sure we will see very soon. So that takes us to the end of this very illuminating panel. Thank you once again all to all of you, to the panelists for your time. And to the audience, please stay with us because we'll be segmenting over to a very exciting next part of the discussion soon. So thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce now the next segment, which I think if all of you were following the Alita Solia Awards earlier, you would see that right now is actually the exciting moment where we announce, right, the recipients of the inaugural Alita Solia Awards. So without further ado, I'd like to bring aboard our guest of honors, right, Justice Lee, as well as our ambassador from France to help address the audience, give some thoughts, as well as to announce the winners of the Alita Solia Awards. So first up, I think we have Ambassador Bentor. He is no stranger to legal innovation, as has come to my attention. So Ambassador, over to you to give your remarks, please. Ambassador, sir.
Thank you very much. Justice Lee Seok-Kim, dear participant, it's a pleasure, to attend the Tech Law Festival today's session. And I remember perfectly well in 2018 when I attended the inaugural event at the Suntec City Convention, and I had the pleasure at that time, of being the guest of honor at the invitation of the Chief Justice Sundaresh Menon. And I remember it was really exciting, to see how one can leverage new technologies and innovation to improve the practice of law. I remember some showcase of new tools developed based on artificial intelligence and how it can make a radical change in the practice of law. And so this year, I'm very confident, that the Tech Law Festival, though it cannot be held in person, because of the COVID, but remains extremely also vibrant, and that you have been, through very exciting discussions all together over the past 3 days. As you know, the French embassy remains fully committed to foster collaboration between France and Singapore on law and technology. Singapore is a well-known, a very important legal hub in Asia, and we want to continue to promote very close collaboration between France and Singapore. and we are very grateful also to the instrumental role played by Singapore Academy of Law in that endeavor. So let me today highlight 3 specific areas of collaboration, which I'm sure, will be relevant to what have been discussed during this Tech Law Festival this year. We share the same ambition, which is to build a community of law, of technology and business professionals. And as I said, in our 2 jurisdictions, and we think that we can learn from each other. And so we have to build, the bridges between our 2 legal ecosystem. And we want to do this, and the way to do this is to bring together, the legal and business leaders of Asia and Europe, and to set up a platform so that they can learn from each other and achieve this objective. So what has been decided is to organize every 2 years Asia-Europe Legal Leaders Summit. And this summit will encourage exchanges on issues of business law. We will also organize a series of educational webinars and a professional certification program. And it will be jointly organized by Singapore Academy of Law and Sorbonne Assas Law School, who is present here in Singapore. And it will cover areas such as data protection, AI, digital finance that you have covered during this Law Tech Festival. And last but not least, we plan also to organize networking events for the French and Singapore law, technologies and business communities in conjunction with the Tech Law Festival and the future Law Innovation Program, FLIP, for those who are familiar with this acronym, which is an incubator of Singapore Academy of Law. And we think that it could contribute, to foster innovation and collaboration between our legal hubs and also increase, the partnership between our 2 legal ecosystem. So over the next few months, we will provide you with more details on these different initiatives. And I'm very pleased again, being here today because there is this very promising perspective, very exciting perspectives ahead of us. And we think that it's really, a wonderful opportunity, to contribute to this innovation ecosystem here in Singapore, and which can also reflect how innovation thrives in Singapore and in Asia. And I think it's also very well illustrated by the Asia Pacific Legal Innovation and Technologies Association, ALITA, and through this its inaugural awards here at the Tech Law Festival. And I will now turn to Justice Lee to share more with you about these awards. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Monsieur Marc Abonchoul, the Ambassador for France. I'm very pleased to hear about the initiatives that you have just announced, and I'm very excited and look forward to our collaboration, the collaboration between Singapore and France in the area of legal technology. It's easy to forget that France was one of the countries at the forefront of the IT revolution 20 years ago. And I certainly look forward to see the fruits of this collaboration that you have just announced, Excellency. A very good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. And we have come to the Alita Solia Awards ceremony. I must say that this year's inaugural Alita Solia Awards is a testament to how far our legal tech community in the Asia Pacific has come in terms of actionable innovation initiatives. Now, buzz is always good to have. It is energizing and inspiring, but buzz alone is insufficient to sustain a community. It is action that sustains us, as we have seen in the growing global community of initiatives like Tech Law Fest, the Future Law Innovation Program, or FLIP, and of course the Asia Pacific Legal Innovation and Technology Association, ALITA. In 2019, we welcomed the inception of ALITA here at Tech Law Fest. It was hoped that ALITA would foster greater collaboration and coordination for legal innovation and technology in the Asia Pacific, and raise the stature and voice of the region's legal innovation industry. In 2020, we witnessed the launch of the State of Legal Innovation in the Asia Pacific Report, or the SOLIA Report. The ALITA Legal Tech Observatory and the Legal Innovation Strategy Toolkit. This year, I'm pleased to see that ALITA has taken it a notch higher by launching the inaugural SOLIA Awards. I am also heartened to see the community coming together at Tech Law Fest to celebrate the achievements of Asia Pacific's legal innovation and technology community. The ALITA SOLIA Awards is the Asia Pacific's first set of legal innovation and technology awards that is community-based, project-focused, and inclusive. The genesis of this was the desire to recognize that innovation comes in all shapes and sizes and from a range of sources, and to give kudos not just to innovative ideas, but to meaningful and impactful action. This is reflected in the SOLIA Awards 2 award groups. The first is the People's Choice Award categories, which reflect a desire to recognize projects that have demonstrated high levels of collaboration, responded to needs surfaced by COVID-19, or that challenge conventional thought. Voting for the winners in this category has been done via Facebook, and we saw 16 nominees vying for the top spots across 3 categories. I hear that canvassing on social media for votes has been very active. I am encouraged by this. Besides showing that competition is stiff, it reflects on how legal innovation can and will continue to touch the lives of perhaps billions across the Asia Pacific. The second group of awards, involving a judging panel that I was pleased to be a part of earlier today. Our panel find it exceedingly challenging to pick one winner for each of the 3 award categories, given the high quality nominees that made it to the finals. The final round with the judges was an enjoyable talk show format, and certainly one of the more insightful and entertaining judging experiences I have had. As His Excellency the Ambassador has mentioned, Singapore's role as a hub of legal innovation and technology in Asia is distinctive because it is a space where sustained and deep collaboration with others from all over the world is not only possible, but actively supported and encouraged. It is easy to lose sight of the fact that the best ideas sometimes surface because of our differences, and for that reason, it is important for us to celebrate inclusivity, diversity, and community in the field of legal innovation and technology. The ALITA SOLIA Awards at Tech Law Fest is a fitting way to do so, and I look forward to this being a yearly feature of Tech Law Fest. Last but not least, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the impressive efforts of Team ALITA. Despite the organization's young age, its pioneering and dynamic steering committee and secretariat have gone to great lengths to push past boundaries and place the Asia-Pacific region on the global innovation map. I am also pleased to learn that ALITA today has more than 230 member organizations from over 20 jurisdictions, including some of the world's largest law firms and legal technology companies. All these would not have been possible without the partnership of ALITA's key regional partners, Raja and Tan Asia, REGIT, the Asian Law Students Association, as well as the award partners, Linklaters, CLOC, Clifford Chance, TechLawFest, and Profit, and also all of ALITA's members and the guidance and support of my fellow members on the board of advisors. But enough from me. I'm sure we are all excited to hear who the winners are. Josh, over to you to kick off the next segment.
To understand, sir, and just well those remarks. Take off the main part of her right now, so I'm sure that everyone and for the people. So again, categories. So
okay, let me see. Unmute stuff. Judge, Ambassador, it looks like we're having a bit of a technical difficulty, so I'm going to sub in for Josh here. And basically, we would like to invite Justice Lee now to announce the People's Choice Awards. Judge, I believe Josh shared with you the list of winners. So if I can invite you to maybe read out the list, and then we'll bring the winners on screen. And I think Josh's feed has stabilized, so I'm going to bow out and hand back over to Josh. Josh, over to you.
I think it is.
Okay, so Josh, I think your connection is still a bit laggy. So this is what happens when you're 15,000 miles away and we're trying to overcome distance with the tech. So Judge, over to you, please.
Thank you, Anita. For a moment, I thought I was hearing Darth Vader there. Well, it gives me great pleasure to announce the People's Choice Awards 2021. As I've said in my remarks, we were confronted with a long list of very good competitors, and but we have gone through the motion. They have the public have voted, and here are the winners. For the Sans Silo Award 2021, the winner is Collaborate. Congratulations. For the Legal Technology Wildcard Award 2021, the winner is Lower the Bar. Congratulations. And last of all, for the Legal Technology COVID-19 Award 2021, the winner is InSync Evidence Platform Dispute Resolution Transformed. Congratulations. My congratulations to all the winners, and I now hand you back to either Darth Vader or Anita.
Thank you, Justice Lee. We're going to go one last try. I love the Darth Vader voice, but it might be a little difficult to understand. So Josh, over to you. Fingers crossed.
Is Darth Vader.
So you still have the Vader voice, so I'm just going to see this through to you, and I hope I do you justice. Without further ado, thank you so much, Justice Lee. And Ambassador, we will be very grateful if you could announce the winners of the main awards from the list that we shared with you.
And normal voice, is it okay? Good. So it's also a pleasure for me, to announce the winner of this competition, and congratulations, to all the participants. The first award category is the Legal Transformation Project Award, and it's InSync who has been nominated. Congratulations. The second award category, it's Tech Access to Justice Award, and it's Lower the Bar. Congratulations. And the third award category, it's Legal Technology Entrant, and it's Lower the Bar again. Congratulations to all.
Yep.
Over to you, Darth Vader.
Darth Vader still speaking.
Thank you, Darth, and thank you, Ambassador and Justice Lee, for that memorable award ceremony.
Yes, we will remember.
Josh, you're going to do this from Mars, and then we'll really make history, right? Everyone, thank you so much. A hearty congratulations to all the well-deserved winners, and in fact, everyone who participated in the inaugural Alita Solia Awards. Josh, Alita team, stupendous effort, a much-needed initiative, and I hope it will be the mainstay of TechLawFest every year. Thank you so much, Ambassador. Thank you so much, Judge. Thank you so much, Josh. I think we will wrap up this particular session, and everyone else do enjoy the rest of TechLawFest. We have an NFT session coming up. Bye-bye. Stay safe.
Thank you.